There's a mushroom that sells for $2,500 per pound, not per bushel, not per crate, per pound. 16 ounces. A single mushroom can be worth more than a week's wages. This mushroom cannot be farmed. It cannot be cultivated in warehouses or grown on logs or produced in controlled environments. Every attempt to domesticate it has failed. Every laboratory that has tried has given up. It grows only in the wild. It grows only where it chooses. It grows in a symbiotic relationship with trees that takes decades to establish and cannot be artificially replicated. This makes the mushroom rare. Rarity makes it valuable. Value makes it the most expensive fungus on Earth. In Japan, this mushroom is given as a gift to emperors. It is served at weddings that cost more than houses. It is presented to business partners to seal deals worth millions. The mushroom itself is a symbol of status, of taste, of wealth beyond ordinary reach. The Japanese pay any price for this mushroom. Their own forests once produced it abundantly. Those forests are dying. The supply has collapsed by 95% in 50 years. What was once common is now almost unobtainable. So the Japanese look elsewhere. They look to countries where this mushroom still grows wild. They look to forests where it fruits abundantly every autumn. They look to places where local people walk past it without knowing what it is. They look to America. This mushroom grows across the United States. It grows in the Pacific Northwest. It grows in the Rocky Mountains. It grows in the forests of New England. It grows wherever pine trees sink their roots into well-drained soil. It grows in backyards. It grows in parks. It grows along hiking trails where thousands of people pass every weekend. And almost no American knows it exists. They step over it. They kick it aside. They see a mushroom and think nothing of it. They do not know they are walking past something worth more per pound than silver. The Japanese know. They send buyers to American forests every autumn. These buyers pay local harvesters a fraction of the final price and ship the mushrooms to Tokyo, where wealthy collectors pay thousands for a single specimen. American mushrooms, Japanese profits, American ignorance making it all possible. Today, we are opening the file on the most valuable mushroom that grows in American soil, the fungus that commands prices reserved for precious metals, the wild food that the Japanese treasure and Americans ignore, and the industry that profits from making sure you never learn to recognize what grows beneath your trees. If this matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. The file is open. The mushroom is called matsutake. The name means pine mushroom in Japanese. Matsu is pine. Take is mushroom. The name describes exactly where it grows and what it needs. The scientific name is Tricholoma matsutake for the Asian species and Tricholoma magnivelare for the closely related American species. Mycologists debate whether they are the same mushroom or different species. The market does not care about the debate. Both command premium prices from buyers who know what they are looking at. The American version is sometimes called white matsutake or western matsutake. It grows larger than its Japanese counterpart. It has the same aroma, the same flavor, the same culinary properties that make Japanese chefs weep with desire. The aroma is what defines matsutake. It is unlike any other mushroom. It is unlike any other food. People who encounter it for the first time struggle to describe what they are smelling. Spicy, cinnamon-like, piney, earthy, slightly fruity, reminiscent of Red Hot's candy, reminiscent of dirty socks, reminiscent of autumn forests after rain. The descriptions contradict each other because the aroma is complex beyond simple categorization. It contains compounds that exist in no other food. It triggers responses in the brain that no other smell triggers. The Japanese describe it as the smell of autumn itself. They say that smelling matsutake is like smelling the season changing, like smelling time passing, like smelling memory. This is why they pay $2,500 per pound. They are not buying a mushroom. They are buying an experience that cannot be obtained any other way. The compound responsible for the distinctive aroma is called matsutake alcohol, or 1-octan-3-OL, combined with methyl cinnamate and other volatile compounds. Scientists have identified the molecules. They have synthesized them in laboratories. The synthetic version smells nothing like the real thing. The mushroom contains something that chemistry cannot replicate. The mushroom contains magic that science cannot explain. The Japanese have prized matsutake for over 1,000 years. The first written records appear in the Manyoshu, an anthology of Japanese poetry compiled in the 8th century. Poets wrote of gathering matsutake in autumn forests. They wrote of the fragrance rising from cooking pots. They wrote of gifts exchanged between lovers and offered to nobles. For 1,000 years, the Japanese relationship with this mushroom has been documented. The traditions are deep. The cultural significance is profound. The mushroom is woven into the fabric of Japanese identity in ways that Americans cannot easily understand. The imperial court received matsutake as tribute from provincial lords. The quantity and quality of matsutake a lord could provide reflected his territory's value. Wars were fought over forests that produced abundant matsutake. During the Edo period, from 1603 to 1868, matsutake hunting became a refined autumn activity. Nobles would organize expeditions into the forests. They would bring poets and artists to document the experience. They would prepare the mushrooms over charcoal in the forest itself, eating them moments after harvest. The Matsutake hunt was not simply gathering food. It was communion with nature. It was appreciation of impermanence. It was meditation on the passing of seasons and the approach of winter. These traditions survive today. Matsutake hunting tours cost thousands of dollars. Restaurants serve matsutake kaiseki, multi-course meals built entirely around the mushroom. Auction houses sell individual specimens to collectors who may never eat them, who simply want to own and smell and contemplate them. The Japanese relationship with matsutake is religious in its intensity. It is cultural in its depth. It is economic in its consequences. And the mushroom that inspired 1,000 years of poetry grows unnamed and unrecognized in American forests. The Japanese matsutake supply collapsed because the forests collapsed. Matsutake requires living pine trees. It forms a mycorrhizal relationship with pine roots. The fungal network spreads through the soil, connecting with tree roots, exchanging nutrients in a symbiosis that neither organism can survive without. Japanese red pine forests were once vast. They covered hillsides from Hokkaido to Kyushu. They produced matsutake in quantities that made the mushroom common, affordable, accessible to ordinary people. Then the pine wilt nematode arrived. This microscopic worm, spread by pine sawyer beetles, destroys pine trees within weeks of infection. It clogs the vascular tissue. The tree cannot transport water. The needle's brown. The tree dies. The nematode spread across Japan throughout the 20th century. By 2000, it had killed an estimated 70% of Japanese red pines. The forests that had produced matsutake for 1,000 years were dying. With the trees died the fungus. Matsutake cannot survive without its host trees. When the pines die, the fungal network dies. The mushrooms stop fruiting. The supply vanishes. Japanese matsutake production dropped from 12,000 tons per year in 1940 to less than 1,000 tons today, a 95% decline in a single human lifetime. A collapse that transformed matsutake from a common autumn food into a luxury that only the wealthy can afford. The price rose as the supply fell. Basic economics, limited supply, unlimited demand. The cultural traditions did not weaken as the forests died. The desire remained, only the availability changed. Today, a single first-grade Japanese matsutake sells for $100 to $200 at Tokyo markets. A perfect specimen with closed cap and firm flesh can sell for $500. The price per pound reaches $2,500 for the highest grades. The Japanese must look elsewhere for what their own forests can no longer provide. They look to China, where matsutake grows in Yunnan province and Tibet. Chinese matsutake is less aromatic than Japanese, but it is available. Japanese importers buy thousands of tons annually. They look to Korea, where Japanese colonial-era planting of red pines created forests that now produce matsutake. The Korean mushrooms are excellent, but the supply is limited. They look to North America, where vast forests of pine and fir produce matsutake that most Americans have never heard of. The American matsutake is a secret hiding in plain sight. It grows across an enormous range, from British Columbia to Mexico, from the Pacific coast to the Rocky Mountains, in isolated populations in the Great Lakes region and New England. Anywhere that pine, fir, hemlock, or Douglas fir trees grow in well-drained soil, American matsutake may fruit. The forests of Oregon and Washington produce the majority of the American harvest. The mushroom fruits from September through November, when autumn rains saturate the forest floor and temperatures cool. Harvesters who know what they are looking for can collect hundreds of pounds in a good season. They sell to buyers who ship to Japan, where the American matsutake commands prices of $50 to $100 per pound wholesale. By the time it reaches Tokyo retail markets, the price has multiplied several times. The mushroom that an Oregon harvester sold for $50 per pound may retail for $300 or more in a Japanese department store. This is the arbitrage of ignorance. Americans do not know what they have. Japanese buyers know exactly what Americans have. The buyers profit from the gap. The American matsutake industry is almost entirely export-oriented. The mushrooms are harvested in American forests by American workers and shipped immediately to Asia. Almost none remain in the country where they grew. American restaurants do not serve matsutake because American diners do not know to ask for it. American grocery stores do not stock matsutake because American shoppers would not recognize it. American foragers do not seek matsutake because American foraging guides barely mention it. The ignorance is comprehensive. The opportunity is enormous. The mushroom grows in conditions that are common across America. Matsutake requires a host tree. In America, the primary hosts are pine species, particularly lodgepole pine, ponderosa pine, and shore pine. Douglas fir, hemlock, and true firs also form relationships with the fungus. These trees are not rare. They dominate forests across the western United States. They grow in national forests, state parks, and private woodlands. They grow in suburban neighborhoods where developers left stands of trees. They grow in backyards, where homeowners never cut down the pines that were there before the house was built. Matsutake requires well-drained soil, sandy soil, rocky soil, soil that does not hold water after rain. The fungus cannot tolerate waterlogged conditions. It needs soil that breathes. This requirement is also common. Much of the mountainous west has well-drained soil. The glacial deposits of the Pacific Northwest provide ideal conditions. The volcanic soils of the Cascades are perfect. Matsutake requires a forest floor relatively free of thick duff. Heavy accumulations of dead needles and organic debris prevent the mushrooms from pushing through. Forests that burn periodically, clearing the duff layer, produce the best Matsutake crops. This describes millions of acres of American forest. It describes conditions that exist within driving distance of most Western Americans. It describes backyards and communities built into forested foothills. The mushroom is not hiding. The mushroom is growing wherever its requirements are met. The only thing missing is people who know how to find it. Finding Matsutake requires understanding how the mushroom grows. Unlike most mushrooms, Matsutake does not fruit above the soil surface. It fruits at the soil surface or just beneath it. It pushes up through the duff and soil as it matures, but young specimens remain completely buried. This is why inexperienced foragers walk past Matsutake without seeing it. They are looking for mushrooms that stand proudly above the ground. Matsutake hides beneath the surface. Experienced Matsutake hunters look for the push. They look for small bumps in the soil surface. They look for cracks in the duff layer. They look for the subtle disturbance that indicates something is pushing up from below. When they see a suspicious bump, they brush away the soil gently. If Matsutake is present, they will see the white cap emerging. They will smell the distinctive aroma before they see the mushroom itself. The smell is the confirmation. No other mushroom smells like Matsutake. If you smell cinnamon and pine and something indefinably autumnal, you have found what you are looking for. The mushrooms grow in rings or arcs, called shiros. The Japanese word shiro means castle or territory. The shiro is the underground network of fungal mycelium that produces mushrooms. A shiro can be decades old. It expands outward by a few inches each year. It produces mushrooms along its outer edge where the mycelium is most active. A single shiro might produce mushrooms every autumn for 50 years or more. Finding a shiro is finding a treasure that will pay dividends for a lifetime. Once you know where a shiro exists, you can return every autumn to harvest. The mushrooms appear in the same locations year after year because the fungal network persists beneath the soil. Japanese Matsutake hunters guard their shiro locations with the secrecy of gold prospectors protecting their claims. In Japan, shiro locations are passed down through families like inheritance. They are marked on maps that are never shared outside the bloodline. American forests are full of shiros that no one knows about. They produce mushrooms every autumn that no one harvests. The wealth renews itself annually, while Americans import mushrooms from Asia because they do not know their own forests contain the same treasure. The harvest season is brief and specific. Matsutake fruits when soil temperatures drop below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and autumn rains have thoroughly moistened the ground. In most American habitats, this means September through November. The season begins in the northern reaches and higher elevations. Canada and Alaska see mushrooms in late August. The Pacific Northwest peaks in October. California. And lower elevations may produce into November. A heavy frost ends the season. Hard freezes destroy the mushrooms in the ground before they can mature. The window for harvest is measured in weeks, not months. During this window, the mushrooms push up rapidly. A bump that appears today may be a harvestable mushroom tomorrow. The growth is fast enough that experienced harvesters check their spots every few days. The most valuable Matsutake are the youngest. The Japanese grading system prizes mushrooms with completely closed caps. The membrane covering the gills should be unbroken. The flesh should be firm and white. Once the cap opens and the gills are exposed, the value drops dramatically. The mushroom is still edible, still delicious, but it is no longer worth $2,500 per pound. Open cap Matsutake might sell for $50 per pound instead of $500. This is why harvesters dig for mushrooms still beneath the soil. The most valuable specimens have not yet emerged. They are hidden treasures that only those who know to look will find. The taste of Matsutake justifies the price that those who know are willing to pay. It is not a flavor that can be compared to other mushrooms. Button mushrooms, shiitakes, portobellos, they are all pleasant but ordinary. Matsutake is extraordinary. The flavor is rich and complex. It has the umami depth of aged cheese or cured meat. It has a spiciness that lingers on the tongue. It has a sweetness that emerges after the initial savory impact fades. The texture is firm. Unlike soft cultivated mushrooms, Matsutake has a dense, meaty bite. It does not become slimy when cooked. It maintains its structure even after extended cooking. The Japanese have developed preparations that showcase the mushroom's qualities. Matsutake gohan is rice cooked with matsutake and simple seasonings. The mushroom infuses the rice with its aroma. Every grain carries the essence of autumn. It is considered one of the supreme achievements of Japanese cuisine. Dabenmushi is a clear soup steamed in a teapot with matsutake, shrimp, chicken, and ginkgo nuts. The broth captures the matsutake fragrance. Drinking it is like drinking autumn air. Grilled matsutake, cooked over charcoal with nothing but a brush of soy sauce, allows the mushroom to speak for itself. The heat releases the volatile compounds. The aroma fills the room. The taste needs no enhancement. These preparations are simple because the mushroom is not. Complex preparations would obscure what makes matsutake valuable. The Japanese understand that the mushroom itself is the point. American chefs who discover matsutake become obsessed. They rearrange their autumn menus around it. They call suppliers daily asking when the shipments will arrive. They pay prices that would be absurd for any other ingredient. The few restaurants that serve American harvested matsutake charge accordingly. A matsutake tasting menu in San Francisco or Portland might cost $300 per person. Diners pay willingly because they cannot get the experience elsewhere. Most Americans will never encounter matsutake in a restaurant. The supply is too limited. The demand from Japan absorbs almost everything harvested. What remains goes to a handful of high-end establishments that most people cannot afford. But the same mushroom grows in forests that anyone can access. The commercial matsutake harvest is dominated by immigrant communities that understood the mushroom's value because they came from countries where matsutake is known. In the Pacific Northwest, Southeast Asian immigrants, particularly Cambodians, Laotians, and Vietnamese who arrived as refugees in the 1970s and 1980s, dominate the matsutake harvest. They recognized the mushroom because similar species grow in their home countries. They saw opportunity where Americans saw nothing. These harvesters work through the autumn season, often driving hundreds of miles between productive forests. They sell to buyers who have established relationships with Japanese importers. The buyers pay cash. The harvesters move to the next spot. The work is hard. It requires hiking through steep terrain. It requires hours of walking and searching. It requires knowledge that must be learned through experience because no book can teach you to see the subtle signs of a hidden mushroom. A skilled harvester can earn several $100s per day during peak season. An exceptional harvester in exceptional conditions might earn over $1,000 per day. The money attracts harvesters from across the country during matsutake season. Competition can be fierce. Popular harvesting areas become crowded. Conflicts between harvesters occasionally make news. The combination of valuable mushrooms and desperate harvesters creates tension that sometimes turns violent. National forests and BLM lands are open to mushroom harvesting, with permits that typically cost $20 to $100 for a season. The permits allow commercial harvesting in quantities that can be economically significant. Most American harvesters do not bother with permits because enforcement is minimal. The entire industry operates in a gray zone: cash transactions, minimal record keeping, export documentation that may or may not reflect reality. The mushroom flows from American forests to Japanese tables through channels that regulators do not fully understand or control. The matsutake cannot be cultivated because its relationship with trees cannot be artificially created. Scientists have tried for decades. The Japanese government has funded extensive research. Universities have devoted laboratories to the problem. The rewards for successful cultivation would be enormous. Every attempt has failed. The fungus requires living tree roots to survive. It cannot be grown on dead wood or grain or the substrates that work for other mushrooms. It needs a living partner. Researchers have tried inoculating tree seedlings with matsutake spores. The spores sometimes germinate. The mycelium sometimes grows. But the relationship that produces mushrooms does not establish. The problem appears to be time. The symbiosis between matsutake and pine trees takes 20 to 50 years to mature to the point of producing mushrooms. No commercial operation can wait 50 years for a harvest. Additionally, the conditions that trigger fruiting are not fully understood. Temperature, moisture, soil chemistry, host tree health, and other factors all play roles. Recreating the perfect combination in an artificial environment has proven impossible. The mushroom remains wild because the mushroom refuses to be tamed. This is what makes it valuable. Anything that could be cultivated would be cultivated at scale. Production would increase, prices would fall. The $2,500 per pound would collapse to $25. The matsutake's resistance to cultivation protects its value. The mushroom's wildness is its worth, and the wild mushroom grows in American forests that belong to the public. It grows on national forest land that every American citizen owns. It grows on BLM land that exists for public use. It grows in state forests and county parks and private woodlands where permission might be obtained. The mushroom that sells for $2,500 per pound grows on land that you already pay taxes to maintain. It fruits every autumn, whether anyone harvests it or not. It waits for someone who knows how to find it. Learning to find matsutake is not difficult. It requires attention. It requires time in the forest. It requires willingness to look at the ground differently than you have looked before. Start by finding the right habitat. Look for pine forests with well-drained soil, Avoid wet areas and thick undergrowth. Look for mature trees, 20 years old or more, that have had time to establish fungal partnerships. Visit during the right season, September through November in most areas. After autumn, rains have soaked the soil. When nights are cool but hard, freezes have not yet arrived. Look for the push, small bumps in the soil or duff, cracks where something is pushing up from below, disturbances that do not match the surrounding terrain. When you see a suspicious bump, brush away the surface carefully. Use your fingers or a soft brush. Do not dig aggressively, or you may damage the mushroom beneath. If you find white flesh beneath the surface, smell it. The aroma is unmistakable. If you smell cinnamon and pine in autumn, you have found matsutake. If the smell is ordinary or unpleasant, you have found something else. Harvest by cutting at the base or gently twisting the mushroom free. Do not pull, which can damage the underground mycelium. The mycelium is the organism. The mushroom is just the fruit. Damage the mycelium and you damage future harvests. Note the location carefully. GPS coordinates are ideal. If you find one matsutake, others are likely nearby. If you find a productive spot, it will produce again next year and the year after and the year after. A single successful search can establish harvesting spots that will provide matsutake for decades. The culinary applications of matsutake extend beyond Japanese preparations. Western chefs have begun exploring what the mushroom can do in non-traditional contexts. The results have been revelatory. Matsutake butter, made by infusing softened butter with finely minced matsutake, creates a spread that transforms simple bread into a luxury experience. The butter can be refrigerated for weeks, slowly developing flavor as the compounds meld. Matsutake oil, made by simmering the mushroom in neutral oil, captures the aroma in a form that can be drizzled over finished dishes. A few drops on a risotto or pasta elevates the dish dramatically. Matsutake salt, made by drying and grinding the mushroom with sea salt, creates a finishing salt that adds the characteristic flavor to any savory dish. A pinch on grilled steak or roasted vegetables adds a dimension that seems almost magical. The mushroom can be dried for long-term storage. Dried matsutake rehydrates well and retains much of its aroma. A supply of dried matsutake from autumn can last until the next season. The mushroom can be preserved in oil or frozen for medium-term storage. Frozen matsutake loses some texture but retains flavor. It works well in cooked preparations where texture is less critical. A successful forager can harvest enough matsutake in a single season to supply their kitchen for a year. They can give matsutake as gifts that recipients will remember forever. They can sell surplus to restaurants or buyers and earn money that makes the time investment worthwhile. The economics for a home forager are compelling. Assume you find 10 pounds of matsutake in a season. This is achievable for a dedicated forager who has identified productive spots. At retail Japanese prices of $200 per pound average, this represents $2,000 worth of mushrooms. At American wholesale prices of $50 per pound, this represents $500 that could be earned selling to buyers. Either way, the return on time invested is substantial. A forager who spends 40 hours over the course of a season earns $12.50 to $50 per hour at the low end. A skilled forager in productive territory earns far more. These economics explain why the immigrant communities that know matsutake guard their spots jealously. The mushroom represents real income during a specific season. It represents knowledge that can be passed to children. It represents participation in an economy that most Americans do not know exists. The knowledge barrier is what protects this economy. If every American knew about matsutake, the forests would be stripped bare. The competition would be brutal. The prices would fall as supply overwhelmed the Japanese demand. This is why you have never heard of matsutake. Not because it is rare in America, it is common, not because it is hard to find. It requires only knowledge, not because it tastes bad. It tastes extraordinary. You have never heard of matsutake because the people who profit from it do not want you to know. The buyers who purchase from harvesters want the supply chain to remain limited. More harvesters would mean more competition for mushrooms. Prices paid to harvesters would rise. Margins would shrink. The exporters who ship to Japan want American demand to remain low. If Americans started eating matsutake themselves, less would be available for export. The lucrative Japanese market would have to compete with domestic consumption. The harvesters who know where the mushrooms grow want their spots to remain secret. More foragers would mean more pressure on productive areas. The shiros that produce reliably would be over-harvested. Everyone who profits from matsutake benefits from American ignorance, so the mushroom remains unknown. The cultural knowledge that the Japanese have accumulated over 1,000 years remains confined to immigrant communities who brought their knowledge from Asia. The American majority walks past treasure they do not recognize. This video breaks that silence. You now know that matsutake exists. You now know it grows in American forests, possibly in your backyard if you have the right trees. You now know it is worth more per pound than any other wild food you could harvest. You now know what to look for. the push of soil, the white cap beneath the surface, the aroma that smells like autumn itself. You now know that the forests you drive past every day may contain mushrooms worth thousands of dollars. You now know that the season begins in September and ends with the first hard freeze. You now know that this year's autumn could be the year you find your first matsutake. The knowledge that was hidden is now yours. The mushroom that grows beneath the pines is waiting. It has always been waiting. It will fruit this autumn as it has fruited every autumn for thousands of years. The only question is whether you will look for it. The buyers will be there. They will set up in small towns near productive forests. They will pay cash for every matsutake you bring them. They will ask no questions about where you found them. Or you can keep them yourself. You can experience what Japanese emperors have experienced for a millennium. You can smell the smell of autumn distilled into a single ingredient. You can taste what $2,500 per pound tastes like. The mushroom is worth that price because nothing else provides what it provides, and it grows in your backyard. If this video helped you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every share reveals what they wanted hidden. The next video opens soon.